Excel has three new regex functions and these are incredibly powerful. The kind of things that you can do with regex functions is something that you cannot do with any other formula or feature in Excel. So in this video, I'm going to show you a lot of examples. I would first start with the basics and then dive into some advanced use cases of using regex in these formulas. And by the time you're done with the video, I'm pretty sure you would have a very good handle on how to use regex in Excel. So let's get started. Now, before I get into the examples, let me quickly cover a few basic things about these new regex functions in Excel. So there are these three new regex functions, and then the regex is also available in the XLOOKUP and XMatch. So these three new functions are REGEXEXTRACT, REGEXREPLACE, and REGEXTEST. Extract function is going to go in the cell, find a pattern, and then extract it. REGEXREPLACE is going to replace a pattern, and REGEXTEST is going to check whether a pattern exists or not. And if it does, then it is going to return true, else it is going to return false. Now, what is a pattern and how it works is something I'm going to show you in the examples. Now, regex has also been introduced in XLOOKUP and XMatch, which means that now you can use a pattern as a lookup value and then use it within XLOOKUP. So it is going to go into a data set and find that specific pattern in any cell that matches that pattern. Now, in this video, I'm not going to cover XLOOKUP and XMatch. If you want me to cover more details about it, let me know in the comment section and I will create a separate video about it. Another thing is that you will see me calling it regex, but some people call it regex because it comes from regular expression. But no matter what side you are, what you choose to pronounce it, in this video I'm just going to go with regex, but both are correct. Now, regex has been around for many years. It has been around since 1950s and it got popular in 1960s. So it has been around for a while. It is a part of many programming languages including Python and VBA. So many of these new AI tools that are in existence today are already well trained on these regex patterns, which means that anytime if you get stuck or if you're not able to identify what the pattern should be, you can simply ask any AI tool, any tool, whether it's a free one or a paid one, it should be well trained on the regex patterns. Another important thing, which is not really something you need to remember, but just to know, is that regex has different engines. So the engine that is there in Excel is called PCRE2. This is the same engine that is also available in Google Sheets and Python. But then there are multiple engines, which means that there might be slight differences between the regex pattern and how these work in different languages. But for the purpose of this video, this is something you just need to know. You don't need to remember or worry about it. And finally, the availability. As far as I know, all these three new regex functions are now available to anyone who has Microsoft 365. If you do not have it yet, you will soon have it. I'm not sure whether everyone has it in XLOOKUP or XMatch or not, but as far as I know, these three new regex function is something that everyone has who has Microsoft 365. Now, another thing that I want to cover, and I will cover this very briefly, is that there are these meta characters that you need to know. Now, you do not need to remember them. As I said, you can use any AI tool to quickly create a pattern. But when you're working with regex, it is a good idea to know what it's doing and how it's working. So sometimes some of the easy patterns is something you can quickly create without relying on any AI tool. So these are the meta characters that are used in regex, and these will be used to create a pattern. Now, let me quickly cover a couple of these meta characters, but as I said, you do not need to remember them. Also, the examples I have created is in such a way that I will cover all these meta characters in the example. So if you do not understand what it's doing right now, you will have a very good idea when I'm covering the examples. Also, this is not an exhaustive list, which means that there are many more meta characters, but I don't want to cover all of them. If you want to, you can learn it on your own time, and you can also ask any AI tool. Now, just to give you a few ideas, in this case, for example, this meta character dot, it matches any single character except new line, which means that if you're using this as a pattern, then it is going to match any character in the cell. If you talk about asterisk, this is just like the wildcard asterisk we have in Excel, which means that it is going to match any number of characters. It could be 0, it could be 1, it could be 2. Then they have caret, which means that whenever your pattern is matching, it will start from the beginning. Dollar means it will start from the end. So these are all these characters. Again, as I said, I'm not going to go through all these, and you will get a better idea of how these work when I jump into the examples. So let's go and look at the first example. So let's start with a simple example. Here I have all these names and I want to extract the first name and the last name in these two columns. Now I know that this is something that you can do with many different tools in Excel. You have the text before and text after function. You also have text split. You can do this with flash fill. You can do this with Power Query. But have a look at this data and you will notice that this data set is not consistent. So sometimes I have these middle name initial. Sometimes I have the entire middle name. Sometimes I do not have it. So I just have the first and the last name. So the data is not completely consistent. Now again, this can be easily solved using other Excel functions, but let me show you how to do this using regex, and then I'm going to show you a slightly more complicated version of this. So to get the first name, I'm going to use the REGEXEXTRACT function. Now the REGEXEXTRACT function, as I mentioned, is going to go into this cell, identify a pattern, and then extract it. In this case, I wanted to go in and identify a pattern that would match the first name in the names list. Now, this function takes 4 arguments. The first one is the text, which is going to be the cell that has the text in which I want to match the pattern. The second one is going to be the pattern itself. Now, these two are mandatory arguments. You have to give it to them. And the pattern would always be in double quotes. So let me put the double quotes here. Now, the third argument in this case is it gives you the first match if you choose 0, which is the default. So if you do not specify anything, it will give you the first match. It can give you all the matching patterns in case you choose one. And then there is a concept called capture groups of first match, which we will see in one of the examples. But for this one, we do not need the third and the fourth argument. The fourth argument in this case is case sensitivity. So if you want the pattern to be case sensitive, which it is by default, then you just don't do anything or use 0. But if you want it to be case insensitive, then you can use 1. In this case, I'm just going to use these two arguments, the first two. Now I have to specify a pattern, and the pattern in this case is going to be /w. And when I use this, it now means that it is going to look for anything that looks like a word character. Now in this case, if I remove the /, what it's trying to do is it will just go inside this cell and look for a W, because the pattern is W. So if it finds a W, it will give it to you. If it doesn't find a W, it will not give you anything. I think it will give you an error. But that is not what I want. When I add a / here, this now becomes something that regex understand as something different. It's not identifying this as a W, but rather a word character. So now when I hit enter, it gives me the first word character, which is M, capital M. But I just don't need M, I want the entire word. So what I'm going to do is come here and add a plus sign here. Now when I add a plus sign here, it means that it is going to find this pattern, and then it will continue to find the pattern till it's finding it. So in this case, it is going to look for a word character, start from the left. So it will find capital M, then it will continue to find these characters till it encounters a space character. And as soon as it encounters a space character, it will stop, because then it is not a matching pattern. See what happens when I hit enter, it gives me the entire first name, and you can use this on the entire range. So if I use this entire range, it is going to give me the first name for all these cells. Now, if I want to get the last name, I can actually use this same formula with one minor thing. Now, when I started looking for the first name, I did not specify anything, whether I want to start from the beginning, from the left or from the right. But by default, it starts from the left side of the cell. So it starts looking from the beginning of the cell. But in this case, I wanted to start from the end. So it will start looking from the end. And when it identifies a space character, it would stop and give me everything, which is the last name. So I'm just going to come here and put a $sign. When you put a $sign, it means that the matching pattern should start looking from the end of the cell. So now when I hit enter, it gives me the last name. So this is again very simple. As I said, this is not the only way to do this in Excel, but this is a good way to start learning regex, where you can see that you can quickly extract first and the last name. So just to refresh what we have learned in this part of the video, if I use something like this, then it means a word character. If I use a $sign, it means that it would start looking from the end. And if I use the plus character, which means that whatever is the pattern, it will continue to look this pattern till it doesn't find anything which is not matching the pattern. So now let's look at a slightly more complex example. So in this case, I have these names, but you can see again, the data is inconsistent, and in some cases, I do not even have the space character. So now this is something that becomes more complicated, and you probably cannot do this with something like a text before or a text after, because there is no delimiter. But you can still easily do this with regex. So let me show you the pattern, which in this case is going to be something where I identify the first alphabet, which is the uppercase alphabet, and then I keep on extracting anything which is in lowercase. So in this case, if I look at Milton, then the M is capital and then everything else is small, and it needs to stop when it encounters the next capital letter, which is L in Landrum. So I'm going to start with this cell. This is the cell that has the text, and pattern needs to be in double quotes. And let's put the pattern here, which is going to be within square brackets A to Z in capital. Now, if I use this, when I use square brackets, anything that is within the square brackets is going to be matched as one character. See what happens if I just use this and hit enter, it gives me capital M because it goes into the cell, starts looking from the left, and it finds anything which is between A to Z and is a capital letter. So it gives me M. But I do not want this only, I want after this all the lowercase alphabets as well. So now I would again have square brackets, and then I would have A to Z in lowercase. So now what it does is it gives me the first uppercase character and first lowercase character. See what happens when I hit enter, it gives me MI. But I don't want to stop at I want to go till it's finding all the lowercase characters. So as I showed earlier, what you will do is add a plus sign here. And that's it. Now when you hit enter, it gives you the first name. And if you want it for all these names, just select this entire range and it gives it to you. And you can see how easy this is. And if I ask you to do it using any other method in Excel, that is going to be more complicated than this. Now I want to get the last name. Again, very simple. And if you remember from the last example, we will just add a dollar sign here in the end, which means that it is looking for the same pattern but from the end of the cell. So now when I put dollar here and hit enter, it gives me the last name. Now in this example, I have these emails and I want to get the username here and domain name here. Now again, you must be thinking that this can also be done using text after and text before, because I have a delimiter, which is the @ sign, and you're absolutely right. But let me just still show you how to do this using regex, because I want to explain an important concept here. So in this case, I would start with regex extract, and this is my text. And the pattern needs to be in double quotes. Now the pattern here in this case needs to be anything which is not an @ when I'm looking from the beginning, and the same thing, anything that is not an @ when I'm looking from the end. So what I'm going to do is, if at this point in time I just put @ here and hit enter, it gives you @ because that is the pattern that it's looking for. But I'm looking for something which is not @. So I would put this in double quotes. If I just double quotes, no, square brackets. Now if I just use this, it is again the same thing. It is just looking for an @. But now if I put a caret here within square brackets, if you start with the caret, this means that this now becomes a negated set, which means that now it is going to look for anything that is not @. Now if in this case I hit enter, it gives me J, just one alphabet, because it starts looking from the left, and this is just saying that it needs to look for just one alphabet, one character. So it just matches J and gives it to me. But I don't want to stop at J, I want to get the entire name, the entire username. So again, very simple, I would come here and I would use plus, and that's it. It gives me the result here. I can either copy this cell down, the formula down, or I can just select this entire range. And to get the domain name, I would just use the same thing. And as I mentioned earlier, if you want to start looking from the end, you are going to use a dollar sign. And now when I hit enter, it gives me the domain name as well. So in this part of the video, I've showed you one concept which is called negated. So if you have square brackets and if you put a caret sign at the beginning of the square bracket, then whatever is the pattern that you mentioned within the square bracket will not be followed. So in this case, if I put an @ sign, which means match anything that is not an @ sign. And again, the rest of the concept was similar. You saw how to use a plus sign when you want to keep on repeating the pattern till it doesn't find a non-matching pattern, and a dollar sign, which is start looking from the end. Now let's look a slightly more complex example. So in this case, I have this data, I have these cells, and I want to extract the email from here. And as you can see, this is not a consistent data. So I do not know where is the email. I do not even know whether the email starting would definitely have a space before it or after it, because in this case you can see that I have this part here where I have support@company.co.uk and I have a parenthesis, so it's not flanked by space characters. Now extracting email from this could be tricky if you're using anything else in Excel, but not with regex. With regex, it's actually quite easy. Now the pattern is going to be a little longer, but it's actually very easy. So I already have the pattern here in the comment. So I'll copy this and let me put this here and then I'm going to explain the pattern. So now when I hit enter, it is going to extract all the emails here for you. Now let me quickly explain the pattern here. So we start with something like this. So if I put this here and let me zoom it, if I come here and if I look at it, as I mentioned earlier, anything which is within square brackets is going to be considered as is. So when I say it A to Z, it means it could be anything which is between A and Z in uppercase. Then it could be anything which is A and Z in lowercase. Then it could be any number. It could be a dot and an underscore, a percentage, plus or hyphen. So these are all the things that can be used in a username. But if I do not mention the plus here, this means that this is only going to match one thing. It could be anything. It could be an uppercase, lowercase, number or anything, but it would just match one character. But when I put a plus here, it means that it is going to match any number of characters in the username. So in this case, if I come here and I show it to you here, I have this part before the @ which means that this is going to represent a username followed by an @. So this is going to be matched as is. And then again, I have this part here, which means that it can have the domain name, which could have any character, any alphabet. It could be a number, it could be a dot or hyphen, and it would have a plus, which means that as long as this pattern matches where we have this pattern here before the @ and this pattern after the @, it is going to extract the email, and that is exactly what it does. Now you can see I did not mention parenthesis, so it is not matching parenthesis. When it goes into this cell, it starts looking from the left, it comes here and then it identifies that this part, the support at company.co.uk matches, but the parenthesis does not, so it only gives me that result. So this is how you can use regex, where you have to build a little slightly more complicated patterns. Again, this is not very complicated, to be honest. This part just says match anything which is between square brackets, continue to match it till you do not find anything else. Then following this pattern, there should be an @, and then after the @ there should be this pattern, which could be any uppercase, lowercase, number, dot or hyphen, and then keep on matching it till you do not find anything else. So this is how you can extract an email. But let's see a slightly more complex example. So in this case here, I have this data where I have multiple emails and I want to extract all these emails in this one cell. So I want johndoe@example.com, and then in the same cell, let's say I want janesmith@example.com as well. Now, this is going to be slightly more complicated, but we can use the same pattern we created here. So I'm going to just copy this pattern and see the beauty of regex in this case, especially the function in Excel is this, that the function has been created in such a way that it makes these kind of things easier. If I just use this pattern here and hit enter, it only gives me the first email. Why? Because it starts from the left and it starts matching these patterns, and as soon as it finds a pattern, matches it, it just returns the first one. But if you remember, I mentioned about the third argument in the regex extract function. So here, if I show you these arguments, the first one is by default, which gives you the first matching email or first matching pattern in this case. But if I choose all matches and now hit enter, it is going to give me all these, but you don't see anything here. That is because when you are using dynamic arrays, it can only spill in one direction. It can either spill down or it can spill on the right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this formula and remove this. So it is only A2 here. And now you see it spills in the row. So now I have the first name and the first email and the second email that it found. And if I copy this down, you'll see that it does it for every cell. So here I have these two, but in case I have three, then it is also going to extract three. So in this case, there are three emails. So it extracted first, second, and third. Now I want to combine them and put them in one single cell. That can easily be done using the text join function. So in this case, I need to specify the delimiter. Let's say the delimiter is comma followed by space character. And then this is my pattern. This is my regex formula that is going to return an array, and then text join is going to combine it. So now when I hit enter, it gives me this and I can copy it down. And you can see easily we have extracted all the emails in one single cell. Now, again, if I ask you to do this with anything else in Excel, it is going to be very, very difficult, if not impossible. But with regex, it is very simple. So in this part of the video, I've explained a couple of things. The first one is that you can have any number of things within square bracket, and then that is going to be matched. So if anything is there within square bracket, it is going to consider that as something that can be matched. Then you can construct an entire pattern where you have the @ and you can have the pattern before @ and after @ and then it is going to construct everything. And the most important thing I showed you is the third argument in the regex extract function that is going to match and give you all the matching values, matching strings that it finds within the cell. Now this is my favorite example of using regex function because it makes it so easy to split text and numbers in the same cell. Here you can see I have this data and I want to extract all the numbers from here, and the data is not consistent. So first of all, I do not know how many number of characters are there in the text part. I do not know how many number of digits are there. Sometimes there are 5, sometimes there are 4. And even with text, it is the varying length of the text. So sometimes I have space characters, sometimes it is 4 characters, sometimes it is just 2. So now in this case, if I want to extract the number, see how easy and simple it is with regex. So I use regex extract. This is my cell, and the pattern in this case is going to be simply 3 characters /d plus. Now /d indicates a digit. This in regex terms means that this is going to represent a digit, and when I add plus, it means that it is going to start matching a digit, and once it finds a digit, it is going to keep going till it is finding digits in the same sequence, and as soon as it stops finding the digits, it is going to stop. See what happens when I hit enter? It gives me this number here. So simple. If I have to do this with any other thing in Excel, it is going to be very difficult. I know there is this functionality in Power Query, but this is again very simple and just uses a simple formula with 3 characters in the pattern. And I can drag this down. Now, if I need to extract the text, again, I can do the same thing. I can copy this formula, and instead of small lowercase d, I'm going to use uppercase d. This means a non-digit character. So it is going to extract everything that is not a digit. So it will start looking from the left part of the cell, the leftmost part in the cell, and then it will start matching. And when it finds non-digit characters, it will extract and give it to you here. So now when I hit enter, it gives you ID here because that is the only one here in this case. But if I drag this down, you'll see that it extracts all the text characters that are there before the number, or it could be after the number. But as soon as it finds a non-digit character, it will give you everything that is a non-digit character till it encounters a digit character. So this is again very simple, but let me show you a couple more examples in this case. So again, I have this data. It's very inconsistent. Sometimes I have numbers before, sometimes the numbers are after, sometimes there's a mix of these numbers and text. I have this kind of data, and I have currency data. So let's use the same formula that I've used earlier, regex extract. And in this case, I'm going to select this cell and /small d lowercase d plus as the pattern. And let's copy this down. And let's do the same thing for the text. So here I'm going to have capital D. Now let me go through each of these examples one by one. So in this case, this is fine. It gives me the number, it gives me the text exactly how I want it. Does the same thing here. So you can see the sequence of numbers and text does not matter. It just extracts the number and text. Again, makes it different than something like a text split or text after, because you're not looking for a delimiter, you're looking for a pattern. But in this case, you can see it finds 1, 2, 3, which is the first matching string of digits, and it gives it to you here. And the same thing it does with text. Now in this case, what if I do not want only 1, 2, 3? I want 1, 2, 3 as well as 8, 7, 6 as well as 9, 7, 5, or all the numbers. Now I've already shown you an example of this, and this can be done easily by using the third argument in the regex extract function, which is 1. When I use 1, it is going to give me all the matching numbers in separate cells in a row. See what happens now when I hit enter, it gives me spill because it's not able to spill. Let me just for the time being delete this, and you can see it spills these numbers. So I have these numbers. It is able to extract all these digits in separate cells, and I can quickly combine them here. So let's use text join, and let's say I want to combine them and be separated by a dash or a space or whatever you want. So in this case, let me use a dash here. So that becomes my delimiter, and this is my formula. Let me use the ending parenthesis. Now when I hit enter, it gives me 1, 2, 3, 8, 7, 6, 9, 7, 5, everything in this one single cell followed by the delimiter I chose. Again, if you have to do this with anything else in Excel, this is going to be quite difficult, but this is so easy with regex. If you want to do the same thing with the text, you can do that here. Instead of lowercase d, I'm going to use uppercase D, and that's it. It gives you all these these characters A, B, C, D, E, F, X, Y, Z in one single cell with the delimiter of your choice. Now in this case, it gives me the number, which is fine, and it gives me order here again, which is fine. But let's say I do not want order here. I want anything that is in uppercase. Then you can again do that because regex allows you to match lowercase and uppercase. So I'm going to use the same example I used in one of the previous examples. I'm going to use square brackets and then A to Z. But if I just use this and hit enter, it gives me capital P, but I want everything which is in uppercase. So I would just add a plus here and it gives me pending. In this case, for example, it gives me a complete and I want it to give me anything that matches the pattern. But in this case, the pattern is uppercase followed by all the lowercase. So again, I can construct a pattern here, which would be first in uppercase, which is A to Z in caps, and then followed by A to Z in lowercase and then plus, which means that the first character should be an uppercase one, then it should be followed by lowercase and extract and give everything till you're finding this pattern. So now when I hit enter, it gives me complete here. So if you have some order data which is very inconsistent or where there are no delimiters or spaces, then regex extract can really help you extract the relevant information. Now in this case, it gives me 299, which again is fine. But let's say I don't want 299. I want the number after the decimal, which is the dot here. So in this case, what I'm going to do is create a pattern. And if I put a dot here and then use the same thing, exactly the same thing. But what I'm doing is instead of using this here, which gives me 299, I'm saying before the digit, I want to have a dot. And the reason I've used a backslash here is because if I just use a dot, it means one character in regex. But I do not want to use that wildcard character. I want to use dot as a dot. So I'm going to use backslash here, which means that do not consider dot as any special character, just use dot as a dot. So it is going to start and first it is going to look for a dot and then it is going to extract all the numbers that is after it. So if I hit enter here, it gives me 0.45 and here it's fine. It has extracted USD just like I wanted. So these are some of the examples. And to be honest, this is something that I really love about regex because I work with a lot of data where there are numbers and text together and I have to split them. And earlier there used to be long formulas. When these newer Excel formulas came in, then things became a little easier. But with regex, it is absolutely simple and I can quickly do all this splitting very easily. In this example, I want to explain a concept in regex called word boundary. So I want to extract, let's say, a pattern in a cell, but I want to make sure that that is the only word in that cell, which means that there is nothing on the left or nothing on the right of that. That is the actual word. And let me show you with an example. So here I have this data, I have these address, and I want to extract the state code, which is MO in this case or IL in this case. Now, to do that, I'm going to use a regex extract. And one more thing, in most cases you have seen that I'm just using regex extract. However, I will also show you regex test and replace, but the pattern is going to work the same way in all the formulas. So because in most of the cases I'm extracting data, I'm using this function. But if you want to replace it, or if you want to just check whether it exists or not and get a true or a false, then you can use the other two functions. But the pattern is going to be the same. The regex is going to work the same way as I'm explaining in each of these formulas. Now in this case, I have regex extract and I want to extract MO here and IL here and NY here. So to do that, I'm going to select this cell and then I'm going to construct a pattern. Now the pattern in this case is very simple. I want to extract anything that is a state code and that state code is in uppercase. So I can come here and I can use A to Z, and because I want it again, I can again use it A to Z here. So now when I do this, it gives me A to Z, which is one uppercase character and two uppercase characters. So this is going to give me two uppercase character. And if I hit enter, it gives me MO, which is fine. And I can drag this down. Now, it looks like it is working fine, but there is one problem here. In this case, for example, if I have anything that is in uppercase and there are two consecutive uppercase characters, then this will not work. See what happens when I come here and let me change this to sweet, but that is in uppercase. And now when I hit enter, this is giving me a wrong result. And I do not want this. I only want those characters where these are uppercase and there is nothing on the left or right of it. So that is not a word. Those two uppercase characters is the only thing there. There is nothing on the left or right. This is where the concept of boundary, word boundary comes in. So what I'm going to do is come here and I would add /B here and /b here. When I do this, it means that there is a boundary on the left of the pattern and on the right of the pattern. This means that it is going to look for this pattern, but there should be nothing on the left or right. If there is, then that is not considered a match. See what happens now when I hit enter, it gives me this, and if I drag this down, now it gives me the right result. So it is working fine in this case. Now it gives me IL despite the fact that I have something that matches the pattern. But because I have used word boundary, which is /b, this is only going to match a pattern where there is nothing on the left or right. If there is anything on the left or right, then that is not going to be matched. So this is, again, if you're working with a complex data set, these word boundaries can actually be quite useful. Another thing I wanted to show you in this case is here I have used A to Z and then I repeated the pattern here. But if you want that pattern to repeat, then you can also put it the number in curly brackets and just put the number here. So if I just put the number 2 here, then it is going to repeat this pattern 2 times. See what happens? It still works. So if you have this pattern which is repeating, then you can just put the number in curly brackets and then put the number in it. So A to Z curly bracket 2, which means that I want this pattern to repeat exactly 2 times. If I make it 5, then I want this pattern to repeat exactly 5 times. So in this example, I'm going to show you how to use the OR operator in regex functions. So here I have this data set where I have these questions and I want to extract all the questions here in this cell. Now, the way I'm going to identify a question is whether it starts from a word, something like a what or how or when, and it ends with a question mark. So I need an OR operator because the starting word could be anything. It could be a what, how, when, should, could. So I'm going to put all those words with an OR operator. So it could be anything that matches that, and it ends with a question mark. So let me first show you the formula and then I'll explain the pattern. So here I'm going to use a regex test formula here. And the reason of this is because I want to return a true in case the cell has a question, and false if the cell does not have a question. So if I hit enter here, you can see it gives me a series of trues and falses. And let me quickly explain the pattern. So this is the first argument of the regex test function where I have the range. And the second argument is the pattern where I have this part here in brackets, and then you can see what, how, and when are separated by a pipe symbol. Now pipe symbol is the OR operator in regex. So whenever you have anything with the pipe symbol, then there could be a match either with any pattern that is before the pipe symbol or after the pipe symbol, which means that my sentence in this cell can start from any of these words, what, how, or when. Then I have the dot followed by an asterisk. Now a dot means one character in regex, and an asterisk is just like a wildcard character in Excel. So it means any number of characters, which means that when you have asterisk after any character, this means that the preceding character can repeat any number of times. So in this case, dot means there it could be 0 characters, 1 character, 2 character, or any number of characters. So my starting would be any of these words, then there could be any number of characters, and then the ending would be a question mark. So I have question mark with a backslash because question mark also represents something in regex. So I do not want it to be used as a wildcard, as a special meta character. I want it to be used as is. So I've put it after the backslash. So this is my regex pattern, and this gives me a series of trues and falses. Now in this case, sometimes it may happen that you have not covered everything. For example, in this case, you can see this question, is it appropriate to use a Gantt chart? Now in this case, I have not used is, and that is why it gives me a false. So I can come back here and I can extend this. So I can put a pipe symbol and I can use is here. And now when I hit enter, you can see this becomes true as well. So you can extend the logic. You can create as many words as you want, in this case using the OR operator. And once I have this, now I can use the filter function to extract all the questions. So I can use the filter function here, where this is my range. And now I want a series of trues and falses, which is something that REGEXTEST function is anyway giving it to me. So now I can close the bracket and hit enter, and it is going to extract all the questions in this case. If you want anything that is not a question, then you can go back and you have to reverse the values that REGEXTEST is giving you. So in this case, I'm going to come here and I'm going to put not function here, which means that a true is going to become a false and false is going to become a true. So now when I hit enter, it gives me anything that is not a question. So if you want to use something like an OR operator in regex, you can do that by using the pipe symbol. In this example, I want to introduce you to the concept of greedy meta character. So let me first construct the pattern, show to you what is happening, and then I will explain what I mean by a greedy meta character. So in this case, let's say I want to extract anything that is in the square bracket in the beginning. So let's say I want to extract all these color values. So I'm going to use regex extract, and this is my cell, or you can select the entire range. And then I'm going to create a pattern. Now the pattern in this case is going to be anything that starts with a square bracket and ends with a square bracket. So I'm going to use backward slash starting of the square bracket and backward slash ending of the square bracket, which means that as of now, if I just use this, it is going to match anything that starts with a square bracket and ends with a square bracket. But I also want some text between it. So I'm going to use a dot, which represents one character. But if I use an asterisk here, this means that it starts with a square bracket, ends with a square bracket, and it can have anything in between. Now, if I hit enter, ideally you would expect this to give you this part here, color blue. But see what happens when I hit enter, it gives you everything. It gives you everything starting from here till the last square bracket, ending of the square bracket. And this is because the asterisk character is called a greedy character, which means that it will try and match as much as it can in the cell. So in this case, if you actually look at the pattern, this is not wrong. It starts with an opening square bracket character, which is here in this case. So this character here, and it ends with a square bracket character, which is here in this case. So it is matching anything in between. But I don't want this. I want this to actually start from here and go only till here, which means that I want this pattern to become non-greedy. And the way you do it is simply add a question mark after the greedy character. So if I come here and I put a question mark here and hit enter, it is going to give you the right result. So this concept is important when you are trying to match where the pattern could be there also in the cell later. For example, in this case, if it's starting square bracket character and ending square bracket character, then it matches everything. But if you do not want it to match everything, you want it to only give you the minimum number of characters that match the criteria, then you can make the character non-greedy. So in this case, I have dot asterisk, which I know is a greedy character. So I made it non-greedy by adding a question mark. Again, depending on the criteria, if you want everything, then you can keep it greedy. But if you do not want it greedy, then you can add a question mark. So in meta, there are a couple of characters that are going to be greedy. Asterisk is the most widely used one and which is the most important one. But if you want to learn more about greedy characters, then you can go and you can ask any AI tool, and it is going to probably help you in giving you all the greedy characters. Also, one thing that I have not mentioned so far in the video is you can actually use any AI tool to quickly help you with creating these patterns or decoding this pattern. For example, in this case, I have this pattern and I want to use any AI tool to tell me what this pattern does. So I can open, let's say, any AI tool. I usually prefer this tool called Claude. And in this case, I can just come here and I can ask this tool, can you please explain the following regex pattern? Yeah, make it regex. And then I'm going to give the pattern here. So you can say it is going to explain everything to you in very simple language. And I'm using this tool, but you can use any AI tool you want. You can use ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini. You can use the Copilot tool that is there already in Windows, and now it's also there in Excel. Also, you can see that it is going to talk about these stuff. So matches any character any number of times, but non-greedily. Now, if you do not understand this, maybe you can ask further questions. Maybe you can come here and you can talk about what are the greedy characters in regex that I should know about. And it will help you with all these. So you can see it tells you about all these characters. So for example, plus also is a greedy character, asterisk is a greedy character. So it will tell you how to make them lazy, which is non-greedy, is by adding a question mark. So again, a very good way to learn regex is just by using any AI tool and creating the patterns and asking patterns that you already have and understanding how they work. And that is the way how I learned regex, and that is probably the best way right now, because you do not need to remember anything. You can create patterns using AI and you can decode patterns using AI. In this example, I'm going to show you an example of grouping. So here I have this data and I want to extract the currency code and the number after that currency code. Now you can see that the data is not consistent. So I have the currency code, but then sometimes I have a space character before the number. Sometimes I do not have the space character. So here in this case, you can see I have the space character, but in this case, I do not have a space character. So in this case, I do not have a space character. Also, the digits could be different. So here I have 4 digits. Here I only have 3 digits. So I want to extract everything. So let's try and do that using regex extract. So I'm going to select this cell and now create a pattern. Now the pattern in this case is going to be within square brackets. I would have A to Z, which means give me anything that is an uppercase character, and I would add a plus here, which means continue to give me till you're finding uppercase characters. But this itself is not enough. So if I just use this part here and drag this down, you'll see that it gives me wrong result. For example, in this case, I have PAY, which is in capital, which is wrong. In this case, it gives me just R in this case, which I do not want. I want anything where the uppercase characters come along with the digits. So I'm going to modify this pattern and I'm going to make a group in this case. So I'm going to put this in brackets, and when you put anything in brackets, then it becomes a group. Now again, if I just use this, it is not going to work. I have to create groups, and that entire group is going to be matched. So for example, in this case, if I now put the pattern, the next part of the pattern, which is /s asterisk, which means that I have this part here. So I have any number of uppercase characters. Then it could be followed by either no space character or 1 space character or 2 or more. And this part here, /s, represents a space character. And when I add asterisk, which means that the preceding character, which is this here, the /s, it could repeat any number of times, including 0. So it could repeat 0, 1, 2, 3, any number of times. So this becomes my second group. And the third group I want to create in this case is going to be any number of digits. So I would have just /d plus. Now when I hit enter, it gives me USD 100 and I can drag this down. Now, the reason I've created these groups, because to be honest, do I really need to create these groups? If I just, let's say, use this formula without the groups, see what happens. I remove these groups here. So I removed all these brackets and it still works. It still gives me the right result. The reason I've created these groups is that when you create a group, you can actually extract each of these groups separately. For example, in this case, I want this to only give me USD or only give me 100, but give me 100 only when there is this exact pattern match, which means that give me 100 only when there is a USD before it, or give me this number only when there is an uppercase character before it. So let me show you another thing here. If I come and I use the third argument in this function, which is capture groups of first match, see what happens. It now gives me these groups in separate cells. So it gives me USD in one cell, the space character, which may or may not be there in second cell, and the number in third cell. And if I drag this down for all of these, you can see I get this. So if you're not creating groups, you would get the entire thing. But if you create groups, then you can also extract specific part in the group. For example, let's say I only want the number in this case. So I can come here and I can use index function and I can say, only give me the third group. So I would just say 3 here and it only gives me the number. If I only want the currency, I can come here and I can say, just give me the currency. So it gives you only the currency value. If you want everything, then you can use this entire regex extract without the index function. So this is the concept of grouping. It is quite useful and you will be using it more when you start using advanced regex pattern, because with grouping, you can match an exact group, which could be multiple groups. So you can match an exact pattern that has multiple groups and then only extract part of the group. And I'm going to show you one more example of grouping later in this video. This is the second last example, and I want to show you a concept called look behind or look ahead in regex, which means that I want to extract a pattern only if there is something before the pattern or only if there's something after the pattern. So for example, in this case, I have this data and I only want to get the digit, the numbers, but only if there is a USD before it. So I want to get all the numbers where the currency is only USD, which means that somehow I need to create a pattern that is going to go inside, check whether there is USD followed by a number, and then only give me the number. So I am going to use a formula, and I already have the formula, so I can just copy it here and then I will explain the pattern to you. So in this case, it gives me 100 here, it gives me 300 here. You can see it only gives me 100 when their currency is USD. If the currency is anything else, it is not extracting the number. So this is called look behind. And here is the pattern. So let me explain this pattern quickly. So let me put this here in this cell. Now, this part here, these three characters is something called as look behind. So when you have question mark, then less than character, then equal to, then this is called look behind. And when you have question mark followed by an equal to sign, this is called look ahead, which means that if you have a look behind, then whatever is mentioned after the look behind is something that is going to be first matched. If that is found, then it is going to give you anything after that matching pattern. So in this case, you can see this is look behind, which means I say this is my look behind character. So it says USD, which means that whatever I'm matching before, there should be USD. So there should be USD behind this pattern. Then there is a space character. And again, it could be a zero number of space characters, 1 or 2 or any number of space characters followed by digits, and it could be any number of digits. So it only gives me digits, but it makes sure that there is a USD. So it looks behind and checks whether there is a USD or not. If there is no USD, it doesn't give me the number. Similarly, you can use look ahead in case you have something that is after and you want to extract anything before it, but only if that part is, there is something that is after that thing that you want to extract. So this is quite a useful concept, but this is a little advanced concept. Now in this case, what I've done is I've used USD. But what if you want to do it with GBP? So you can use the same formula here and you can bring it here, and instead of USD, you can put GBP. And now when I hit enter, it only gives me these numbers for GBP. Now I've hard coded this value here, but can you just refer to the cell? You can. So if I remove this and I put an ampersand here and instead refer to the cell, I'm hoping this should work. So yeah, it does. So it works perfectly. So you can have the pattern, the look behind part in the cell as well, and then you can use it here. Another thing I want to show you is, so let me press Ctrl Z to get this formula back, is you can also use the OR operator in this case. So in this case, it is only looking for a currency which is USD. So it looks for USD and then gives you the digits. But if I want it to be USD or GBP, I can come here and I can use the pipe symbol, something I covered in one of the examples. So this makes it an OR operator, and I can type GBP here. So now what it's going to do is it is going to look behind, but it could either be USD or GBP. So now when I hit enter, you can see it gives me all these numbers where it could either be USD or GBP. And if it is none of these, then it doesn't give me the result. And if you want to get the currency, then in that case, I can use this formula here, where you can see I've used look ahead, which means that in this case, I've this pattern where it's looking for anything that is uppercase, but only it gives you that only in case it sees that there is this pattern match, which means that there is a number after this uppercase character. So if it finds USD, but there is no number, then it is not going to give it to you. For example, if I come here and I remove this number, you'll see it gives me NA, because although it matches the pattern, but it doesn't matches the look ahead, which means that there is no digit. If I come back here and I put the digit, then it is going to give me the result. So this is the concept of look ahead and look behind. It is quite useful if you want to do this conditional extraction or conditional testing, where the pattern matches only when there is something behind or ahead of the pattern. Now this is the last example in this video, and this is going to be a slightly complex example. Now remember that I do not expect you to remember everything or even construct these patterns. You can always use AI to make these patterns for you, or if you have a pattern like this, maybe you can use AI to understand what's going on. I just want to show you what is possible using regex. So here I have these 4 numbers, and you can see the data is not consistent. For example, in this case, I have numbers. Sometimes there are 10 digits, sometimes there are more than 10 digits. Sometimes you can see I have country code in this case here, and I have country code in this case, and sometimes I have these brackets, sometimes I have spaces, hyphens. So the data is inconsistent, and I want to make it consistent in the US number format, 4 number format, where I have 3 digits in brackets, then space, then 3 digits, then hyphen, and then 4 digits. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the REGEXREPLACE function, and this is the function that I use. Now let me first explain what I'm doing here. So with REGEXREPLACE, let me quickly explain the syntax of the function. So REGEXREPLACE first takes the text, then the pattern, just like every other regex function. Then you give the replacement of what you want to replace it with. So these are the three important arguments: the text, the pattern, and then you want the replacement that you want that pattern to take. So the pattern is going to be replaced by whatever you mention in the replacement part. Now in this case, what I've done is I have the regex replace, but I've used it twice, and I'll tell you why. So if I just copy this part here and put it here, what this does is this goes into this cell and it says find anything that is not a digit and replace it with nothing, blank. So it goes in and you can see I have square brackets, and within that I have a caret, which means that this is going to become a negated set, which means that anything that is not a digit, because this /d represents a digit, but this represents anything that is not a digit. So now when I hit enter, it gives me all these numbers. So everything has been removed. I only have these digits. Now, one way of doing it is you can extract the 10 digits from the right and then format it. But let me show you how to do this all with just one single regex formula. So in this case, I have this part here that gives me the series of numbers where there is nothing, only the digits. And then I have the pattern that I want to find and then replacement pattern. So this is the pattern that I'm going to find. And you can see in this pattern, I have this here. So let me copy and put this pattern here so I can explain it to you. And again, don't be afraid of the pattern if it looks a bit complicated. It's actually not. What it's only trying to do is creating these groups. And you can see I've already covered the concept of group. What it does, it starts from the beginning. So character in the caret symbol in the beginning means it starts from the beginning. If the caret is within square brackets, it means negated set. But if it is just like here in the beginning, it means that this is going to match the pattern from the beginning. And dollar means it is going to match the pattern till the end. Now the first part here is a pattern where it says these could be digits, and it could be any number of digits between 0 and 4. And when I add a question mark here, it means that this is optional. And the reason I'm doing this is because I do not know how many number of digits are there. If there are 10 digits, it's fine. But if there are 11 digits, then the first one is going to go here. If there are 10 digits, then this would have 0 digits. If there are 11, it will have 1. If there are 12 digits, this would have 2, and so on. Now, and these are the three other patterns I've created where this pattern means that this is going to hold 3 digits, then this pattern is going to hold 3 digits, and this is going to hold 4 digits. Now, because I'm not using a question mark here, these are all mandatory, which means that this pattern will first classify the 10 digits in this group. So this would get 4 digits, this would get 3 digits, this would get 3 digits. And if there are any extra digits, those would come here. And once I have created this pattern, then I go back here, and once I have found this pattern, which I am going to find because any of these cells at least has 10 digits. So it would fill this at least, and this would remain blank, but at least it would find 10 digits. If there are more, then that would go here. And in this case, I say in these patterns, in these groups, I want the second group. So I don't want the first group because I want to get this. I want to discard any additional digits. I want the second group within brackets followed by a space, then third group, and then a hyphen, and then fourth group, which means that when I say second group, so this represents the number of group that is there in the previous part that we have already created. So this means that second group here is going to be this one. So let me highlight it to you. This group here is going to be this one, which means that it is going to give me 3 numbers in bracket. Then this group here is going to be this one. So this is going to give me 3 digits after the space character. And then there is going to be a hyphen. Then there is going to be 4 digits, the fourth group, which is going to be this one here, which is going to give me 4 digits. So what this does is it goes in, matches all the cells with this pattern, but in the end replaces it with this part here. So it replaces it with this part where it gives me these 3 digits, which is group number 2 followed by a space, then group 3, which is 3 digits followed by a dash, then 4 digits, which is group number 4. And this is how it is going to format all these numbers. Now I know this is a bit complicated, so you can go and you can use any AI tool and learn about this pattern. In most cases, you probably won't have to go so advanced and create patterns like these, but I wanted to show you the power of grouping and what you can do with it. So these are the examples I wanted to show you for all these regex functions in Excel. You can see there are some really complicated stuff you can do with regex, and also how easy it is to quickly find and match a pattern and extract data or replace data within a cell. For example, extracting only digits from a cell or splitting numbers and text in a cell used to be quite complicated, but with regex it can easily be done. That's it in this video. I hope you found this useful. Also, if you're liking these videos, please subscribe to this YouTube channel and click on the bell icon so that you never miss out on any new Excel tips video I come up with.